All right, today we're going to talk about sweeteners and what's the best ones to use and what are the worst ones to use. I've been trying to use different sweeteners for 60 years, and I can remember back, geez, in the early 70s when cyclamates were the number one sweetener and it was taken off the market. And I remember as a 12-year-old kid, I was disappointed. So I've tried everything. I'm going to show you what works, what works to cook with. I'll tell you what I use. There's some really good information and some things to learn about sweeteners.
Why sweeteners are not a free pass for diabetics. For people managing diabetes, choosing a sweetener is not a neutral act. It is a metabolic decision with real consequences for blood glucose control, insulin sensitivity, gut health, and cardiovascular risk. To evaluate each option with clinical rigor, we apply 4 criteria: glycemic index and direct postprandial glucose impact, insulin response, meaning whether the sweetener triggers insulin release even without raising blood sugar, cardiovascular and endothelial safety, and gut microbiome effects. We will examine 6 sweetener categories in order of clinical concern, from the most dangerous to the most beneficial, with the published evidence for each. Erythritol, the hidden cardiovascular risk. Erythritol is a sugar alcohol that occurs naturally in small quantities in some fermented foods and fruits. In commercial use, it's produced through industrial fermentation of glucose and functions primarily as a bulking agent. For many years, it was regarded as one of the safest sugar substitutes available. Zero glycemic index, no short-term blood glucose rise, largely excreted unmetabolized. That profile changed substantially in 2023 when Cleveland Clinic researchers published a large-scale study in Nature Medicine tracking over 4,000 adults across 3 years. Individuals with the highest blood concentrations of erythritol were 1.8 times more likely to experience a major adverse cardiac event, non-fatal heart attack, non-fatal stroke, or cardiovascular death within the follow-up period. A 2024 follow-up by the same research team identified the likely mechanism. Healthy volunteers who consumed a single erythritol-sweetened beverage showed a rapid, significant increase in platelet aggregation, blood platelets clumping together, persisting for hours at doses typical of 1 serving of commercial sugar-free products. This is clinically significant for people with diabetes, who already carry elevated baseline cardiovascular risk. Critically, erythritol is the primary ingredient, not a secondary one, in most commercial stevia blends and monk fruit products. Truvia, Swerve, and many store-brand natural sweeteners list erythritol first on the label, with stevia or monk fruit present only in trace quantities as flavoring. A consumer buying these in good faith, believing they're buying a stevia product, is, in reality, consuming primarily erythritol. Xylitol, a second sugar alcohol under scrutiny. Xylitol, commonly found in sugar-free gum, dental products, low-carb baked goods, and protein bars, has faced similar scrutiny from the same Cleveland Clinic group. A 2024 study in the European Heart Journal found xylitol consumption was associated with elevated cardiovascular risk, and that it actively stimulated platelet clotting activity in a dose-dependent manner. The more consumed, the stronger the clotting response. Participants with the highest xylitol exposure showed significantly higher rates of major adverse cardiovascular events. Xylitol also carries a slightly higher glycemic index than erythritol, typically 7 to 13, meaning a small but measurable blood glucose response on its own, on top of the cardiovascular concerns. Both erythritol and xylitol should be treated as ingredients to actively avoid, not simply limit, given their widespread presence as unlabeled fillers in diabetic marketed products. Sucralose, aspartame, and saccharin have been the backbone of the sugar-free market for decades. Effectively zero glycemic index, no direct blood glucose rise, long regarded as a safe management tool for diabetes. In 2023, the World Health Organization issued formal guidance advising against routine use of non-sugar sweeteners for weight management and metabolic health, based on a systematic review of 283 independent studies. The review found prolonged use was not associated with meaningful long-term benefit and was associated with increased risk of type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and all-cause mortality in observational data. The mechanistic concern centers on the gut microbiome. Research published in Nature in 2014 showed sucralose disrupts gut bacteria composition, reducing beneficial species, including butyrate-producing bacteria, the same microbiome architecture that supports insulin sensitivity.
A secondary concern is the cephalic phase insulin response, a reflexive insulin release triggered by sweetness perception alone before glucose enters the bloodstream. Repeated stimulation of this pathway may contribute to dysregulated insulin secretion over time, particularly relevant for type 2 diabetes or insulin resistance. For type 1 diabetics using exogenous insulin, this is less of a primary concern. For anyone working to reduce insulin resistance, it warrants consideration.
High-purity stevia. Safe, but label reading is everything. Stevia, derived from the Stevia rebaudiana plant native to South America, is among the most clinically favorable natural sweeteners for blood glucose management, with one non-negotiable caveat about purity. The active compounds are steviol glycosides, of which rebaudioside A or Reb-A is the most studied. At 95% purity or higher, Reb-A has a glycemic index of 0 and produces no measurable impact on postprandial glucose, fasting glucose, or A1C. The problem, most commercial stevia products are not primarily stevia. Truvia lists erythritol as the first, most abundant ingredient by weight, with stevia leaf extract present only as a minor flavor component. The label standard to apply, the first ingredient should be stevia extract, stevia leaf extract, or rebaudioside A, with a purity declaration of 95% steviol glycosides or higher, and no erythritol, xylitol, or maltodextrin, a filler with a glycemic index of 95 to 136, higher than table sugar.
Pure monk fruit extract, a solid alternative. Monk fruit extract, derived from Serratia grosvenori, a fruit cultivated for centuries in southern China, is one of the most underutilized, genuinely safe sweeteners in Western markets. The active compounds, called magrosides, primarily magroside V, are 150 to 200 times sweeter than sucrose by weight, contribute effectively 0 calories, and carry a glycemic index of 0. Unlike sugar alcohols, magrosides are not fermented by gut bacteria in the same way, avoiding the microbiome disruption seen with sucralose. Early research has identified potential antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties, with some evidence of protective effects on endothelial function. The identical label warning applies. Most commercial monk fruit products use erythritol as the primary bulking agent, and a product labeled monk fruit sweetener may contain less than 1% actual monk fruit extract. Look specifically for 100% pure monk fruit extract or magroside V as the primary labeled compound. Allulose, the rare sugar that actively works for you. Of all the sweeteners reviewed here, allulose presents the strongest clinical evidence for active metabolic benefit, not just safety, but measurable support for glucose control. Allulose is a rare monosaccharide found in trace quantities in figs, raisins, jackfruit, and wheat, structurally nearly identical to fructose, an epimer differing only in the orientation of a single hydroxyl group. That one structural difference produces a completely different metabolic outcome. Allulose is absorbed by the small intestine but not metabolized, contributing about 0.4 calories per gram versus 4 for sucrose, with a glycemic index of 0. A 2021 randomized controlled trial in BMJ Open Diabetes Research and Care tested allulose alongside a carbohydrate load in people with prediabetes and type 2 diabetes. Allulose measurably blunted the postprandial glucose response, reducing peak blood glucose and significantly lowering the total area under the glucose curve, a dose-dependent, statistically significant effect. Separately, research published in the Journal of Agricultural and Food Chemistry showed allulose stimulates secretion of GLP-1, an incretin hormone that enhances glucose-dependent insulin secretion, suppresses glucagon release, slows gastric emptying, and reduces post-meal glucose spikes, the same biological pathway targeted by the semaglutide class of medications, activated here through food rather than pharmaceutical intervention. Allulose has also been shown to inhibit alpha-glucosidase, the enzyme that breaks complex carbohydrates into absorbable glucose, producing a mild, measurable delay in carbohydrate absorption similar to a class of prescribed blood sugar medications. From a safety standpoint, allulose does not appear to disrupt gut microbiome composition. It's GRAS recognized by the FDA, excluded from total and added sugar counts on U.S. nutrition labels, and shows no erythritol or xylitol type cardiovascular signal in available research. Here is the complete Dominate Diabetes System Sweetener reference, based on the published clinical evidence reviewed in this video. Sweetener. GI, DDS rating, key clinical finding, white sugar/HFCS, 65 to 75. Avoid, direct glucose spike, core driver of insulin resistance, no safe use case for diabetics. Erythritol, 0. Avoid, plus 80% cardiac event risk, Nature Medicine 2023. Hyperactive platelet clotting, Cleveland Clinic 2024. Xylitol, 7 to 13. Avoid, prothrombotic, dose-dependent cardiovascular risk, European Heart Journal 2024. Sucralose/Splenda, 0. Caution, WHO 2023 advises against long-term use. Disrupts gut microbiome. Cephalic insulin response possible. Aspartame/equal, 0. Caution, alters gut microbial diversity, WHO 2023 review. IARC Group B2, possible carcinogen at high doses. Saccharin/sweeten low, 0. Caution, gut microbiome disruption, WHO 2023 review. Mixed legacy data after 40-plus years of study. Commercial stevia blends, 0. Caution, primary ingredient is often erythritol. Read label before purchasing. The stevia itself is safe. Pure stevia, Reb A greater than 95%. 0. Safe. GI 0. No glucose or A1C impact. 0 cardiovascular signal. Verify label purity before buying. Monk fruit, pure extract. 0. Safe. GI 0. Antioxidant mogrosides. No microbiome disruption. Check label. Most blends contain erythritol. Allulose. 0. Best. GI 0. Blunts post-meal glucose. Stimulates GLP-1. Inhibits alpha-glucosidase. Actively beneficial.
Okay, there's a whole bunch of information on artificial sweeteners. Um, it's really important. It's very important for diabetics to pay attention to what sweeteners they use. I've been diabetic for 60 years, and you know, when you're using a sweetener that isn't healthy for you, along with maybe just not for your blood sugar, but for other parts of your body, um, and 60 years of using it adds up. So hopefully you found this very informative. And I'll tell you, my favorite is stevia, 95% stevia. I like it as pure as possible. It tastes great. It works in my iced tea and my occasional coffee. If I'm baking or I need it in something that I'm cooking with, I use allulose. that works really well. I've never had any problems with it or anyone complain about the way that it tastes or the sweetness. So anyway, thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.